This is Glambition Radio, episode number 192 with Jessica Lorimer, founder of Smart Leaders Sell. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. First off, thank you so much to the response we got from last week's episode on the problem with women's networks. I was so delighted to hear that resonated with so many of you on how, women just need to step up in the type of networks they insist upon being a part of. And that is why I'm so excited that I'm launching The Trust this year. It's the new private premier global network for women entrepreneurs, women with businesses generating minimum of $1 million a year. Why am I in that category? It's because besides the beginners, it is actually the fastest growing category of women-owned businesses. We talked about all these stats on the show. We shared really eye-opening studies, and you're going to love it. If you haven't heard it, go back to the last episode and listen to it right now. It's just going to blow your mind. And I also made an invitation if you'd like to learn more about what I'm creating that is really, this is about my legacy play now. This is about what am I creating that I want to be around long after I'm gone. And you can see it at jointhetrust.org. And if you're not at the $1 million mark yet, please let another woman entrepreneur who is going to these events going like, I can't do this anymore. She's just like, I need to be around some intelligent conversation and, a real network, not just a community. That's what we're doing. Jointhetrust.org. Shout out to 2 great reviews we got on iTunes. Thank you. The first is by Mandana D, Life Altering Wisdom. This is one of the most thought-provoking and intelligent podcasts I have ever encountered. I listened to episodes multiple times. Sadly, in a world of where everybody is an expert, Allie's podcast with free content is better than the learning materials some people are selling and for high prices. I believe more in myself when I listen to Glambition Radio. Thank you so much. I love how everyone puts it into different words. That is fantastic. Next one's Mercury Forward. Think Differently. Allie is an iconoclast. Her podcasts about the online marketing business are so good. She's one of the few people, if not the only, in the business who calls out the tired formulas and challenges us to think differently. The interviews are interesting. I've made several significant connections with some of the women I first heard of through Allie's podcast, but the best is when she's talking directly to you about how to market differently. Thank you so much. And now I am excited to share our guest today, who I've gotten to know very well over the last year. Jessica Lorimer and I connected, I think early in 2019, maybe late 2018. And I was so impressed with her. I was a guest on her podcast, learned a lot about what she has created. She's based in the UK. And she, at a very young age, younger than most of us knew what the hell we were doing, got into a really successful corporate sales career because she was naturally just good at it. Then she wanted to jump into the online boom and founded Smart Leaders Sell. She transferred these skills into the entrepreneurial space. And today, she's merged the two. So on this show, you're going to hear her sharing these crucial insights on how she let go of the known in her business so she could say yes to a more aligned vision for the future. What this woman has done over this past year is incredibly courageous. So many of us may be in a business that's working pretty well, and you have no reason to blow it up, but it's not the thing. So she's going to share with you how she did this. And, the direction she's going, I think, is very smart. she's going to talk about overlooked corporate sales opportunities that avoid all this online mass marketing madness. And you may be surprised at some of the businesses who can get some great deals and contracts with corporate. She also has a fantastic podcast that I've been on. As I mentioned, it's called Smart Leaders Sell, and a book. So the beginning of the interview, we go into a lot of what she's doing today, but then we get into the juicy stuff about when she decided to make this big change. And these are the conversations I love that no one's really talking about. Like, when do you make that decision to start turning the ship, even if something seems to be working, because you know it's not where you really could be and the really big impact that you could have in the world. Get ready for an exciting conversation with Jessica Lorimer. Jessica, where are you right now?
I am looking at the sunset, a very early sunset in Southampton in the UK.
How's the weather been?
Terrible. I say that it's been just below freezing for the last couple of days, but I just got back from Norway, where I spent a long weekend where it was -10 on one of the days that I was there. So I'm actually feeling relatively warm at the moment.
I didn't get that. Like, you had a chance for a vacation and you go from somewhere cold to somewhere colder, but it did look beautiful.
It was beautiful. And actually, one of my clients said this to me. She was like, when you go out there, it's a different kind of cold. Like, you won't feel as cold. And I thought she was talking absolute rubbish, but actually she was telling the complete truth. And it's a really dry cold, so you don't feel it too badly.
Kind of like here, it's a dry heat.
Yeah, exactly. I much prefer that.
Yeah. So I've had the pleasure of working with you over the last year, gotten to know you so well. And I wanted to have you on the show because I feel that you've tapped into a real hotspot where a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners who are considering making changes to their business or adding new revenue streams, this is something they should really look at. So I'd love to just dive in there, and let's just talk about what you're doing now, and then maybe we'll go back and get some of your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So as of, I think, June this year, we decided to work on this. I am helping entrepreneurs, specifically service-based entrepreneurs, sell their services into corporate organizations. It's something that I have a huge background with, that I was doing for about 13 years previously. And I'm really, really excited to be working with entrepreneurs, putting them and their skills into the corporate world. So working with anything from big FTSE 250 brands right into, education environments, universities, colleges, that kind of thing, not-for-profits, and actually taking qualified people who have real skill sets and helping them sell in a flexible way into corporate organizations that really need those skills and don't have them perhaps internally.
Was that a dog?
That is the dog.
Or your stomach.
Yeah. We get so many emails about that on my podcast. Everyone's like,
that's so funny. Why don't you share why you made this change? Because your business was on a different track.
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. My business, when I started it 6 years ago, I came into the online space knowing nothing about selling online. I had this huge background in selling B2B within corporate companies. I've been responsible for setting up sales divisions of some of the world's best luxury fashion brands across the world, and it was all incredibly exciting. And when I came into the online space, I was like, well, sales is sales. It's the same pretty much everywhere you go. And it's more about relationship building, developing rapport, psychology, knowing how to put together offers that will actually get people the results that they want. And so I couldn't really understand when I came online why all of these people were really struggling with sales. And that's because, one, I'm obviously a terrible person who just loves to sell things. And two, because that was the environment I'd grown up in. It was not embarrassing to sell. It wasn't weird to be selling regularly or to be, unconcerned perhaps with things like rejection. And so I spent 5 years of my business publicly helping entrepreneurs how to sell to other entrepreneurs and how to use the online space, e-commerce, selling their own services online. And then over the last probably 2 years, I had some clients who were just phenomenal, who had phenomenal skill sets in really, really unusual areas. And I said to them, your business isn't working in the way that you perhaps want it to. It's maybe not generating the revenue that you'd like it to. They were starting to get really tired of all of the online crap that's out there. Mm-hmm. I always recommend that everyone listens to your Stop the Online Insanity episode, because I think it's just brilliant for helping people remember why the online space can get so crazy. And so about 2 years ago, I was taking these private clients and I was helping them sell their services into corporate companies, and they were doing incredibly well, incredibly quickly. Their results were off the chart, and they were generating revenue so much more quickly, but also their businesses were skyrocketing at a really, really rapid rate, because the online world has become this quite saturated place. It's now very difficult to compete in the news feed. Everybody's chattering away on Facebook all day instead of doing, actual business relevant and sales activities. And my clients who were selling to corporates, they were having or building more flexible businesses in shorter time periods and making way more money and being happier. One of my clients, Julie, she has been on 5 holidays this year. I'm very jealous of that. And they've all been to warm places.
Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of coming full circle, because this was your whole background.
Yeah. I started out at 16 in sales. I was one of those young girls who made my, start in life in a jewelry company. And I loved selling, and I became their youngest ever manager. And my job was to go into underperforming stores and help them sell more. And then I moved into the corporate world selling B2B when I was 20. I was headhunted by a firm straight after university. And that's all I've ever done. And I absolutely love it. But I think there's this huge need now to really focus on selling business to business and add a corporate revenue stream to your service-based business. It's not sexy.
Looking back, why do you think you were so in demand when you look back? Was it kind of obvious to you what needed to be done and no one else saw it? Or did you have a gift, or what was it?
I think we'd all like to think that we were gifted secretly. But for me, I love people. I've always been incredibly interested in people, and I'm naturally very curious about why people behave in the way that they do and the way that we react in certain situations. And sales gives you that ability to people watch and get paid for it, which I thought was brilliant. Once you know how people work and once you understand what drives and motivates people, it's really easy to help sell them the best solution for the problem that they're currently experiencing. And sales gets a really bad name because most people associate salespeople with using quite manipulative techniques. And over the last few years, it's become really popular to use NLP and things like that in perhaps quite a negative way to actually force somebody or manipulate somebody into taking the action that you want them to take. I had all of those skills quite naturally as a younger person. And then obviously throughout my sales career, I developed those skills, and I was always determined that I was going to use them with integrity. So for me, I became more sought after because I was consistently developing this culture of solid business development, but business development done with integrity and making sure that our customers always felt valued, and most importantly, that they kept coming back. So the companies that I work for would get a lot of repeat business. And obviously that's something that's quite different and very sought after in the sales space.
Yeah. So today, the clients who you help sell to corporate, here's where I'm coming from. There's a lot of people listening right now going, well, that sounds nice, but I'm sure my business, there would never be a fit for that. Or I wouldn't even know how to go about, talking to these big companies, and it's very intimidating. And I just want to sell stuff online, but can we talk about the types of businesses that you've seen and helped tap into corporate income streams?
Of course. And I think there is an important point there around this idea of rejection. A lot of people say, I would be afraid to sell to corporates, or I'm not sure how I would go about it, because they feel like selling to corporates puts them in a position where they will get rejected more often and potentially rejected face to face. Whereas when you're writing all of these social media posts and emails and, putting them out into the internet ether, you're maybe facing rejection, but you don't know about it. You don't see it. It's not often somebody's going to comment on a Facebook post and be like, no, I don't want your stuff. It sounds rubbish. That's not necessarily going to happen. So actually, especially with women, there is often this fear that we will get told no, but actually that's a really good thing. So if you are going to sell to corporates, the great thing about it is that it is more transparent, and that, yes, sometimes you'll get told no, but equally, more often than not, you will get told yes, and it will be quicker, and your average deal will be worth a lot more than it would be selling to an individual. So just think about that in the background as well. I mean, in terms of the businesses that I've helped over the last couple of years sell to corporations, it's been massively varied. One of my clients, Julie, that I mentioned earlier, she is a phenomenal example. Julie actually sells menopause workplace training. So she teaches organizations how to communicate around this idea that the menopause needs to be something that is mainstream within organizations, that we need to talk about it, and that we need to be able to provide solutions to women who are going through the menopause, and also the men that work with them, and, you know, men who are husbands of women going through the menopause, so they can be more productive within an organization and create a better work-life balance and work culture. So she goes into organizations, she delivers workshops, she sits and helps with menopause policy, and recently was the facilitator and chair at the House of Lords, talking about how we can all make menopause more mainstream in 2020 and actually encourage employees to speak more openly about the menopause experience, and also encourage companies to make a menopause policy an integral part of their HR resource, which is really, really exciting. So we've got everything from menopause right through to fertility, and people who are fertility experts, nutritionists, selling into corporations, right through to service providers who specialize with technology solutions, creating apps, for example, managing software rollouts, LinkedIn lead generation experts, marketeers, lots and lots of different types of disciplines who are actually selling their services into corporations.
And are they doing more consulting or training, or what are the trends you see right now that are in demand?
It's actually really interesting. They are doing a lot of mixed work. So I've got, for example, one of my clients, Nadine, is absolutely incredible. She is a leadership expert, and she does a lot of executive leadership training and specializes in helping employees at companies manage difficult conversations. So for companies who are going through periods of transition, she will help their employees manage difficult conversations with regards to performance management and sexual harassment and things like that, really important issues. Now, someone like that can work one-to-one with executive leaders within an organization. So their end user is a one-to-one employee, but the person paying them, or the company paying them, is the organization itself. We've also seen a huge trend this year in the lunch and learn workshops, where people will go in and they'll deliver a workshop at lunchtime, probably 45 minutes to an hour, and they're charging sort of $1,000 to $1,500 for this, and then being able to successfully upsell into other services like ongoing training, consultancy. Can't even speak, I get so excited about it. And one of the biggest things that I think is going to hit next year is this idea of whitelisting and licensing trainings that can actually sit within company learning management systems and provide an annual fee for the person providing it. That's going to be huge next year, and already is. A lot of my clients are already selling them really successfully.
So someone's listening and thinking, well, this sounds interesting. You know, I kind of have an idea. Maybe this could work for corporate. What are the steps that they should be thinking about as they're considering it? Should they start doing research? What should they do?
The first thing with selling to corporate is to know that if you have a competitor, or if you see somebody else who's already doing something similar, it's a good thing. Competition is really good in the corporate world. It means your idea is commercially viable, and it means that somebody is already buying it, and therefore somebody else will want to. So the first thing you want to be doing is actually looking out, is anybody else already doing this? Do some market research, get to know where the idea has already been proven and is popular, and think about how you might test, tweak, or change that to get better results in a quicker way. The second thing is to build key relationships. In the online world, it's harder. Sometimes I think we feel like we're talking to everyone. And so your messaging is like this really key component to building your audience online and how you show up. When you're selling to corporates, actually, they prefer for you to be a specialist. So your messaging becomes integral, but in a slightly different way. So what you want to be doing is thinking about which companies or which industries do you specifically want to work within. Perhaps you've already got a background in finance or something, and you can leverage those relationships even after you've left. Everyone has a friend or a husband or a wife or a relative who still works in a corporate job that you can say, oh, I'd love to get into this company. Do you know anybody? Would you be happy to refer me? How could I have a conversation with the relevant point of contact? And so actually, being able to specialize in an industry or a discipline makes your life a lot easier, and it makes you the immediate specialist in the market. And that's what companies are looking for, not just for you to be the specialist in your subject matter, but also for you to understand their industry, the specific challenges that will come up for them. And then, of course, the third thing is have good conversations. Ask intelligent questions. Start actually arranging conversations with some of these key stakeholders that you need to be speaking to, and ask interesting questions. Ask not just how many people are in your company and what's going on there at the moment, what's the problem for you, but think about things like that reflect specifically your subject matter. So, for example, you could talk about what's the cost of not recruiting diverse applicants in your industry. Do you feel like you're losing out on major talent pools because millennials are no longer attracted to working for your organization? How do you feel like you're dealing with the generational gap? There are lots and lots of really interesting questions that will indicate to a company that actually you're much more than somebody who just wants to supply them a service and get paid for it, that actually position you as being a credible partner. So you want to really think about, situational questions about the organization itself, so you can learn some information about what they do and who they are, but also pain questions and impact questions to find out what their struggles are actually costing them in terms of productivity, profitability, and their reputation in the market.
And you know what I wanted to throw in there? These companies often are always looking for women to work with as contractors and female-owned companies, right?
All the time. All the time.
Because of certain quotas, or is it just like they need to kind of show like at least that they care?
No, I think it's actually really interesting. I believe that women are much better salespeople. I actually wrote an article for City AM on that last year and got some really interesting feedback from men who were not happy about that statement. But it is true. And there was a recent Korn Ferry report that demonstrated women actually have, out of the 12 soft skills that companies measure as being really important to them, women actually have 11 or score higher than men in 11 out of those 12 categories. Men only score higher than women in one category. And so actually the reason that companies are looking for more female service providers is because not only do they have and outperform men in certain soft skills area, but also they are usually more competent when they're in a role as a third-party supplier because they want to do a better job. Women typically struggle with things like imposter syndrome. And unfortunately, that actually means that a lot of the time we over-deliver as service providers, which is a good thing for the companies that we are working with. But also, it means that women will usually ask for lower rates, which is something I absolutely discourage, but they will often be more committed to the job at hand and providing a quality service alongside those core competencies as well.
Yeah. So where can people go learn more about the training that you've put together?
Of course. So the best place to go to is the website. It's called smartleadersell.com. And if you go over there, you can get access to the podcast and obviously a bunch of different trainings on how to sell to corporates and even some email templates and things like that you can start using as well.
Okay. And you have the year-long program now.
We do. The C-Suite literally just launched in November, and we have some incredibly happy members who are already signing £30,000 plus contracts, having never sold to corporates before, having never had corporate meetings before. And that's really exciting. And the C-Suite has basically been designed to be a 12-month experience where people can actively use my brain, use all of the templates, proposal templates, pitch templates, email sequences, and everything that I've ever learned about selling to corporates or selling business to business, and apply it to their own company and their own services and selling those into corporations.
Okay, smartleadersell.com is the best place. Now I want to talk about some juicy stuff. Okay.
Now we've got all the boring stuff.
Now that we talked about what you do, what you offer, everybody can go, they can learn. You made a big decision this year about letting go of programs that you've built, kind of, changing your brand, deciding to claim a new space. There've been a lot of areas of your life that you've had, some letting go and fresh starts. And would you mind sharing what 2019 has been for you? And because I think a lot of people are going through the same thing right now, like deciding, what they need to let go of for 2020.
I think the best word to describe 2019, if I was being polite, it would be turbulent. And if I was not being polite, it would be shit show. I think
and I want to claim that I've been her coach and it's been my I did not drive her into the shit show, but it just kind of happened.
No, Ali, you've been brilliant. And I think, when I started working with you, one of the key pieces or one of the key phrases that you said to me was, it's funny when I start working with people, often they go through this period of letting things go and maybe their team leaves and things like that. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. And then that all happened to me. And I was like, oh, God.
We upped your vibe so much. It's stuff just started imploding.
Exactly, literally everything. So I started working with you in February 2019. And at that point, I was at a really good point in my business in that my revenue was doing really, really well. We had successfully crossed the 7-figure mark quite a while ago. So I was really not worried too much about revenue and things, but I was bored. And I think that was the key piece that made me want to work with you, is that I'd gotten kind of complacent with my business. It was all ticking along. It was fine, but I'd gotten to that point where I didn't really enjoy it all as passionately as I had done perhaps when I'd first started. And I think that's quite normal, isn't it? When you set up a business, you're never going to be in that state of adrenaline and passion forever. But I just got to this point of complacency and, things were ticking along and they were fine, but I wasn't as interested or invested. So one of the first things that I did this year was reassess what I wanted my business to look like. And the conversations that we had around actually owning and dominating a space were really interesting for me. And obviously I decided that I really wanted everybody to know how and why they should be adding a corporate revenue stream to their business. Because in the current political and economical climate, if you don't have a corporate revenue stream in your business is really going to struggle next year and the year after that, because selling to purely online entrepreneurs and kind of contributing to the coaching pyramid scheme that's going on is not going to benefit anyone for very much longer. I firmly believe that. So we had this conversation about where to go. And then sure enough, my team, we brought it, again, a nice phrase would be, we brought it all in-house. Another phrase would be, I had to fire a lot of people / a lot of people left, and it got messy at points. I ended up being back in the trenches, hiring really good people. And we're now at a point probably 6 to 8 months on where my team is incredible. We provide a really high level of customer service now. Everybody's really on board with the mission of the company and where we're going and the values. But that wasn't necessarily the case back in February. And it was really, really hard to transition away from having a longer term team and actually having to say to people, no, I don't think you fit our ethos anymore. Or actually, I don't think that you're going to be on board for the vision that we want to execute this year. And equally, it was really interesting. I got quite a few emails from people on my team saying, we don't think we're going to be the right fit for you anymore, and actively leaving themselves, which at the time felt like a bit of a kick to the ego, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it's like when you're going to break up with someone and they're wrong, but then they break up with you first. You're like, hey.
You robbed me of my moment.
I was gonna break up with you. Why are you breaking up with me? I'm the best thing you've ever had.
Exactly. So we had all the team challenges. That was, I think, the first bit. So I kind of decided that the vision for the company needed to change. And then we had all these team issues. And I was like, oh my goodness, really, this is not where I wanted to go. And then we had to start executing the new vision. And actually that was quite challenging too. I set up a second podcast. And I remember coming to you and saying, oh my goodness, nobody's going to want to sell to corporates. It's really boring and it's not sexy, but it will make them a ton of money. Why do people, why are they not going to understand this? And how can I get it really visible? And how can I get it out there? And I already had a pre-existing podcast, and I knew that this topic was so different from my current listenership's needs that I was like, right, we have to set up a brand new podcast. So then suddenly we had to do that and deal with all of the extra content creation and batching and all of that kind of thing that comes in line with producing new content. And actually that was brilliant. That was a really, really good experience. Instead of having a huge launch, because I just didn't have the time or the energy or frankly the brain capacity with everything else that's going on, I put out an episode a month, and we just focused on having great show notes and making sure it was super searchable on iTunes and things. And suddenly we started to see listeners, and we weren't seeing huge amounts. I think in the first month we got just over 100 listeners, and I've never been so happy about something in my life. But actually, more importantly, from that first ever episode in June, we were selling tickets for my inaugural Converting Corporates event in the November. And right from that first episode, we started selling tickets on this podcast that nobody had ever heard of, that we hadn't done a huge launch for. And people were suddenly paying us like upwards of £500 to come to an event where they'd never heard of me. They'd only listened to one podcast episode, and it was going to be the first event of its kind. And that was amazing. That was absolutely incredible. And in the end, the podcast itself, we tracked back, and out of the 5 episodes that we managed to get to air in between June and November when we held the conference, we made £23,000 in ticket sales from a podcast that had still under 200 listeners a month. And that people were buying these tickets to this conference to learn how to sell to corporates. And that was kind of where we tested this idea of, will people actually want it? Will they pay for it? Is it going to be something that we can actually deliver in a really good way? I'd never hosted an event before at that scale. So that was really interesting. And then, of course, I came to you and said, this is great. People are loving the selling to corporate thing, but now I'm getting copycatted all of the time. And that was really hard.
Yeah, it happened almost overnight, didn't it?
Immediately. Yeah. As soon as people saw. In fact, we had an incident where somebody commented on one of my posts, one of the earliest ones I ever wrote about the event, and said, oh, this is so needed. And then they decided they were also going to teach people how to sell to corporates, set up their own event for the month before, charged a fifth of the price on tickets, and only got 8 people or 10 people or 12 people or something to go. And I ended up selling 75 tickets for 5 times the price. So I felt awful about that, but also pretty good, because it does mean that people are loyal. They are actually looking at who is producing quality content and who's not just jumping on a bandwagon. Are you actually leading in your industry? Are you becoming that category of one? And that's a conversation that, you and I have had a lot of times this year around, how can I be more innovative? How can I lead in that market? How can I become that category of one? And so it's actually really quite reaffirming to see that despite the fact I get copied all of the time now, that actually people are buying quality content that they can believe in and that they can trust, and not just buying from people who are perhaps cheaper, but jumping on a bandwagon that they maybe don't understand.
Yeah. Can you talk about having to shut down a program too? Because this is something I feel like no one talks about. I feel like we should have a whole show on how to elegantly shut down a program, without your members hating you. Talk about your process with that, because it's somewhere that I see a lot of clients get attached because they love their members, they love their people, but they may have been taking care of them for years, and now they need to close that chapter and go on to do some more of their great work, but they don't know what to do with these people who are all sitting there and still love the program, but you feel like it's not an energetic match, or it's taking up too much time, or it's just not working. So many reasons. But talk about your journey with that, because it was a big deal, because you really did care for these people.
It was really hard. So I had a membership. I had the Dotties, and I loved it. I'd set it up 2.5 years ago, and it was making money. I used to be very honest about it with my community and say that it was a complete loss leader. It was completely inexpensive. I massively over-delivered, but I really loved the community, and I was really proud of the women in there and the strides that they were making. But these were women who were perhaps aiming to get to their first 5K month. And I remember when I came to you and I said, look, I'm doing all of this work, and I really love the people, but I don't know that I'm necessarily even the best person to help them anymore, because I don't want to, think about creating somebody's first lead magnet ever again, really. And, it got to the point where I felt like I wasn't going to be able to show up as passionately as I could for them. But equally, I didn't want to let go, because I felt so guilty that what if they went and joined another membership and it wasn't that good? You and I had lots of conversations about this idea of personal responsibility. And I took huge responsibility for these people who were absolutely lovely, who were not paying me a lot of money, but I didn't want them to get burned in the same way that I was seeing other people in the industry. And that caused a lot of sleepless nights for me. And we came to the decision, or I think I came to the decision probably in about the May time, that it was going to be the right time to shut the membership down. And I was really nervous about it because, like I said, I felt this huge amount of personal responsibility for these people. I didn't want to get burned. I didn't want them to buy other programs that were perhaps more expensive, but actually didn't cater to what they needed. And I was also quite excited. And that feeling of excitement actually made me feel a little bit selfish in some ways. That I felt like I was excited about leaving these people behind. And that was the story that I'd given to myself. I was excited about leaving people behind, and that made me feel like I wasn't a good person. And that obviously wasn't true. I wasn't excited to leave people behind because I wasn't leaving them behind. I was evolving into a new version of myself in my own business, and I was inviting people to step up with me, or actually step into something that was potentially a better fit for them with somebody else, and taking that journey themselves. So in the June, I went to my members, and I love how you say elegantly shut something down, because I wasn't. I full on snotty cried on Facebook Live.
Did you slobber? Were you sobbing on the call on a live?
Honestly, there was snot and everything, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so snotty. And people were commenting with heart gifs and things like this, and I was just like, oh no. But I did. I had to have this really open and transparent conversation with that community, and it was so interesting because a lot of the comments were, when we knew that you were working with Ali, we knew that the documents would go. So
my reputation precedes me.
No, nobody blamed you. But people said, when we knew that you decided to work with Ali, we knew that you were stepping up in your business, and we knew that would mean changes. And actually, I had this very transparent / disgustingly snotty Facebook Live where I explained, the biggest part in my business has always been that I want my clients to get the very best results possible. And I always want to give the best delivery and the best service. And I don't feel like I can do that with this community anymore. And these are my reasons, and this is how I'm evolving. And for that reason, I'm going to shut the community down. And, to make it easier, I gave everybody who was in there, an existing member, I gave them lifetime access to the content so that they wouldn't lose out. And I created a little sprint model for them so they would have a roadmap that they could go back to and use and reuse in the future to help them get to that first 5K month. And I gave them a month in the community where I would still be there until the July, where they could ask questions and, make use of their time left in the community, attend, hot seat calls and things like that. And, I went through the whole thing and we didn't have any bad feedback. Everyone was like, this is the best decision for you. We're so happy for you. This is amazing. And I remember saying to you, oh my goodness, I thought everyone was going to be
That's interesting. And I will say that is highly unusual. Almost always you'll get a few of them who are like, you're leaving, or it's their own abandonment issues, or who knows what's going on. But you really did it. You did it beautifully, and they handled it beautifully. So that just shows, your community understands you too. They were watching you and seeing you grow.
I think as well, it was much easier because I've been very transparent about how I felt. And, so I hadn't just kind of gone in there one day and been like, screw you guys, I'm not doing it anymore. I'd been communicating by newsletters and stuff that we had only for that membership community, and saying that things were changing for me and that I was, becoming a different business owner and things. And so actually it made it easier to have quite a grown up conversation with my members. And that was something I really, really appreciated, and I said to people over the course of the following month, I'm so glad and really grateful and honored that people have been so incredible and incredibly supportive of my decision to shut something down that they all loved. And people said, it's a testament really to the community and what we've all built. And actually, they still have their own LinkedIn pod, I think, where they will actually hang out and comment on each other's posts on LinkedIn. And so the community still exists. I'm just not part of it anymore. But it was terrifying, even though it wasn't a moneymaker. I remember saying to you, I'm worried about shutting it down because what if what if I can't help any of those entry level people anymore? And what if, those people don't go to somebody who's got just as much integrity or the same skill level as I do? And it was a really, really hard thing to let go of. And it was genuinely sad. But when I'd made the announcement, I got so many supportive emails from women saying how inspiring it was to see something being shut down, because sometimes we just carry on with things in our own businesses, even though they might not be the right fit anymore. And I think that's true of my life this year. I would say there's been a lot going on. And sometimes we all do this where we keep something because it feels familiar, or because it feels comforting, or because, we're complacent, or it's just there and we don't necessarily want to change it, kind of thing. But when something isn't working, for whatever reason, revenue or flexibility, or just you don't really like it that much anymore, I think actually, you have to make that decision quite quickly. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned this year, personally and professionally, and working with you was great for that, was that actually sometimes you do just have to let go, and that it's actually not a failure to let go. It's much more about being adaptive,
and this is real business. And this is what separates the women from the girls. So all you listening, you think all you see in the surface is people launching programs, and all you hear about is them taking off and doing great. And like, no one's posting like, oh my God, I just had to blow this thing up because it's not working, or you know what, I need to do something else, so I'm shutting this thing down, or like, this is the stuff that goes on behind closed doors. And this was the year, Jessica, that you stepped into being a leader. And like, there's so many women that come through my door, and they're great teachers, and they're leading like a content. They're leading their people. But man, you just demonstrated classy, solid leadership to them, and they will remember that the rest of their lives. There's a reason that group is still together and interacting together. And I think we need to talk about this stuff more, because this, in the whole online world, no one talks about this stuff. And I'm like, this is real business, deciding where you're going, looking ahead, making strategic decisions on what to focus on and where you need to cut off. And this is how it all rolls. And then sometimes people look at you like their head spin, they don't understand. But the great thing is, with your corporate background, you had that solid foundation to work with. And I think that's helped you. It was a huge advantage for you. And now that you've tapped back into it, stuff's just happening effortlessly. Like, everything's just lined up.
Crazy. It's absolutely crazy how quickly it's turned around. And I mean, at the beginning of this year, I remember saying to you on our first call, I don't necessarily feel entirely fulfilled. My business is doing incredibly revenue wise, and I am really young. I think that's one of the things I've started to own this year. I'm 30. I just turned 30 in September, and so actually it's become really frustrating for me to feel unfulfilled, because I was like, oh my God, I'm only 29. Like, if I get to 45 and I've had to do this for another 20 years and I'm still not feeling fulfilled, like, life's going to be dull. There's only so many holidays that you can take. And that was it was a really scary thing for me. And then in the last, 9 months now, 10 months, it sounds really silly, but I've done all these things that I probably would not have done had I not had the corporate background that I have, in terms of understanding, how important numbers are, and making quick decisions and being really flexible, but also your support, Ali, and having somebody else to kind of let you know in the depths of the night, so to speak, that actually it will be okay, and that you just have to wade through the treacle. I mean, this year professionally, I've let go of many, many parts of my business in order to streamline entirely and focus next year only on selling the C-suite and my high-level mastermind, which is already full, so I don't really have to worry about that too much anymore, and really, really own the space around helping entrepreneurs sell to corporates. But I've had to let go of, my membership. I've had to let go of speaking at certain events, because I'm now not able to deliver talks that are outside of that sales psychology and that selling to corporate piece. So that's been quite scary, knowing that I'm having to say no to certain opportunities. I let go of my partner, or my partner let go of me. I don't know how we want to phrase that one. And I took my first solo traveler trip, and that was incredible, to embrace being 100% me for a change, and getting to be selfish about doing the things that I wanted to do. And equally, I've let so much in this year. I've done a lot in terms of really revamping my business model, streamlining my content, being able to produce much higher quality content in a really small niche. We've welcomed and filled out our first launch for the C-suite within literally 3 weeks of hosting the event. We held the inaugural Converting Corporates event, and we had so much success with it. People were literally using what they learned at the event, and within 7 days were signing deals and creating proposals for big companies. But it's that kind of thing. I've invited a lot in. And I think sometimes we focus so much on the letting go that we don't recognize that when we get to choose to say no to some things, we get to choose to say yes to others. And so often in business, in this online world, people only look at the letting go part and they feel really scared of the letting go part, but they don't always look forward and look at the opportunities that letting go actually brings.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jessica. To wrap up, can you share 3 of your best pieces of advice for everyone listening?
Of course. And, I've thought long and hard about this. And number 1 is obviously the most inspirational. Drink wine. A lot of it. I think wine has helped me absolutely get through this year. And in all seriousness, I think if you are not a drinker, please take time to step out and be social. For me, being able to go for a glass of wine with my friends and get some downtime from my business at every single point in my business has always given me objective perspectives and people who do not take it too seriously. Because we get so caught up in how serious our business needs to be and the big decisions that we make all the time. And sometimes you do just need to bounce it off of somebody else who doesn't necessarily understand your industry, who doesn't necessarily understand how important all of this is, because they'll help you make common sense decisions and they'll give you some light relief. So wine drinking is always top of the list. Just, get that done. I think the other thing is know your numbers. Women are really scared of metrics, and you should always know your numbers, particularly the metrics that matter. Not just like how many people watched my Facebook Live this week, but, really look at your email list. Is it actually growing with the right quality leads on there? Are you actually converting at a higher rate? If you know your numbers, you can identify business problems and you can actually solve them. Whereas if you're always looking for vanity metrics, and Ali, I know you did an incredible episode about that recently. If you're always looking at those vanity metrics, unfortunately, all that happens is you never end up increasing your revenue in the way that you want to, and you never end up dominating your market because you're just looking at things that are surface level and not necessarily looking at things that are going to grow your business in any great way. So know your metrics. And when I say know your metrics, don't just figure out what numbers work for everybody else, but know the numbers in your business that matter. Is it conversion? Is it lead generation? Yeah. Or is it something else entirely? That would be the second one. And then I think the third would be invest wisely. Make good investment decisions. That's a really tough one, I think, sometimes to quantify in the online space where literally everyone and their dog has a bias on what you should buy and when. And their launches won't always coincide with when you need to actually learn the skill that they might be selling. But what I would say is when you're making investments, it's absolutely integral to invest in yourself to get to a new level. But often we make investments that are based on somebody else's timeline, on somebody else's countdown timer, and not on the skill that we actually need to learn next. So a lot of the time people invest at much to an advanced level for them, or actually a much more junior level than they need to be investing at, right? If you already run a successful business, you don't need to take a $297 course on how to get on video. You just don't. There are better things that you can spend your time and energy on. And you need to really consider wisely before you make any kind of investment, whether it's in coaching or advertising or, setting up your own podcast, anything at all. It all needs to be about where is the current obstacle in my business and what can I invest in to overcome that? And actually, is that an obstacle that I need to overcome? Just because everybody else is on TikTok does not mean that you need to be. So you don't need to necessarily buy a course in it unless it's going to form a huge part of your strategy for next year. But, making sure that you invest in the right skills at the right time will ultimately always get you better results than investing just because or just for the sake of investing, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Wise words. Thank you for joining us. And everyone should go to Smart Leaders Sell. And Jessica's podcast, by the way, is fantastic. I've been honored to be on it. I think that was one of our first. Were we working together already, or was I on your show first?
No, you were on my show first. I had that heart and mouth moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm going to pitch Ali Brown to be on the show. I'm going to ask Ali if she would appear. And you did. You came back and you were like, yeah, I'd love to. And I was like, oh my God.
Because we checked it out and I'm like, well, she's good. This is a good show. We'll do it. And I just love the accent. I love talking to people with accents. So if you have an accent and you're pitching me to be on your show, you have a better shot at getting me on the show. Because I just get tired of Americans. That's why I married an Australian. Yeah. Thanks, Jessica. Thanks so much. And we will hopefully see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to alibrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.